Now that's probably like my favorite aspect of this whole thing is that they even took the time to dig a giant coin slot. What's going on, guys? Wayne here. Welcome into Equipment World. You know, today Caterpillar held a product launch that was about half a year in the making, but it wasn't for a new machine. It was for Trial 9, the 9th in a series of videos that Caterpillar has put together over the years that used to be called the Built For It Trials, but now have been rebranded to the CAT Trials that put Caterpillar machines and operators into some pretty crazy situations. And some of these videos went viral. For instance, the giant Jenga game, we saw an excavator in a China shop, just to name a few, but it had been a few years since CAT had made one of these. However, CAT is in the midst of its 95th anniversary, and what better way to celebrate that milestone than to make its biggest, most bombastic trial video ever. And as you've hopefully gathered by now, based on some of the footage that we've been showing you, Trial 9 was a massive game of Pac-Man. Now, that video is also very likely well on its way to going viral as you watch this video because, come on, it's real-life Pac-Man, but better because they did it with CAT machines. And by the way, if you haven't seen Caterpillar's Pac-Man trial video, go check that out right now. You can find the link in the description below or up here in the card. Now, beyond the fact that it's just really freaking cool to play Pac-Man with remote-controlled skid steers, which I think bear at least a passing resemblance to Pac-Man himself, I don't know. The other reason this was such a great idea is that it put an incredibly difficult task on the broad yellow shoulders of a ton of other CAT machines. And that task was building an enormous trench maze. No, like really, really big. And the construction of that maze is the focus of this video. See, back in the spring, CAT was kind enough to call us up and let us know that they were working on this. And really the first thing that popped into my head after hearing the idea was, how in the heck are you gonna pull off building a maze, a trench maze of this size? And ever since then, we've had access to everyone inside Caterpillar working to make this thing happen. So today, we're gonna take you on a behind the scenes look at exactly what it took to build the largest game of Pac-Man ever played. Let's get into it. Now, bringing this real-life, giant-sized version of Pac-Man to life, work on that began in earnest back in March, when the first impacts of the coronavirus outbreak really started to take hold here in the US. And that meant that the dozens of CAT people working to make this thing happen were gonna do just about all of the planning for it over Zoom. Technically Microsoft Teams, but you get the point. Now, obviously, the first and biggest question mark with this whole thing was going to be the maze itself. How big did this thing need to be to replace Pac-Man and his friends Inky, Pinky, Blinky, and Clyde with 5 236 D3 skid steers? I'm actually shocked that I got all those names on the first try. And, you know, more importantly, where were you gonna build this thing? Fortunately, the answer to that last question was a bit easier to answer. See, CAT has a very large and very cool and largely top secret facility called the Edwards Demonstration and Learning Center. Now, Edwards has roughly 720 acres of available space, plenty of room for a giant Pac-Man maze, but there was one problem. Where exactly in that 700 plus acres of space are you going to put the maze? Because you can't just dig a massive trench maze out of just any kind of dirt. Plus, one of the biggest priorities for the team inside of CAT that was putting this whole thing together was accuracy and faithfulness to the original Pac-Man game. Now, a lot of that attention to detail in this trial obviously comes through some of the computer animation that CAT did to really make this thing pop and bring it to life. And we covered that animation in our other video on the animation and gameplay surrounding this thing, so be sure to check that out when you finish this one up. But when it came to the maze and the finished product itself, CAT wanted the accuracy to be so high that they would be able to take a drone shot of the finished maze and be able to lay over an actual Pac-Man level and have those two things match up perfectly. But in order to make a maze big enough for skid steers, which would also be carrying various attachments because CAT wanted to be very holistic in the amount of love that it was showing for its product teams, a maze big enough to give these machines enough room to roam around freely and turn around safely, the maze walls needed to be at least 12 feet apart. Now, what that means is taking a Pac-Man level as you would see it on a classic arcade cabinet CRT monitor and scaling that level more than 19,000%. The final design called for a maze 162.4 feet by 180.4 feet with walls that were 4 feet high. So, like I said, given the intricacy of this design and the sheer scale of it, you couldn't just pick a spot and start digging. Because ultimately what Cat really needed here in terms of an engineering standpoint was to be able to dig this trench maze and have it, one, not immediately collapse, two, have enough rain and water resistance to be able to hold up for 2 weeks, a week of digging and a week of shooting, and three, have enough durability in the walls for when the inevitable happens, when one of these skid steers or the attachments that they're carrying runs into it. So when Cat finally decided on the perfect spot to dig the trench maze at Edwards, the first thing they did was call in a team of dozers and have them push out an entire area of field and material that was larger than the maze and deeper. Now, the reason that they did this was so that they could have complete control over the material's moisture content and its compaction value.
We knew if we didn't start, I'm going to call it the foundation of this field the right way, then we were risking, everything crumbling at some point. So we made the decision we blocked out an entire week.
In the end, a team of 5 Cat dozers, a D6, a D6XE, a D8T, a D9T, and a D11 ended up pushing out 5,500 tons of dirt. Then they brought in a 733G water wagon to add moisture to that material, and then they pushed it all right back in to that area that the maze would occupy in 12-inch lifts before compacting each of those 12-inch layers with an 825K sheep foot compactor.
12-inch lifts, compacted it, 12-inch lift, compacted it, brought it all the way back up to a finished grade. Then we were ready to start digging. So that was a lot of time and a lot of work. And when you're doing that, it's easy to cut corners, but we knew we couldn't cut a corner anywhere because it'd only take one corner or a wall to fall over and it's all for nothing.
Now with the maze area prepped, it was time to start digging. And I mentioned earlier how Cat's ultimate goal here with this giant maze was to take a real Pac-Man level and scale it at a giant size. And to dig something like that out of the earth, albeit earth that had the perfect amount of moisture content and compaction, that was still going to be a really intricate task that required a high level of precision. So it's clearly the perfect opportunity to put Cat's grade with 3D machine control technology to work. And using a Pac-Man level as reference, the team created a 3D design file and then loaded that into a Cat 336 excavator to get started with the dig. That dig started in August, 5 months after the initial planning for this project started. Now, throughout this dig, we were talking with Ryan Neal, Caterpillar's product application specialist for large excavators. And the thing to know about Ryan is that in a past life, he was actually an excavator operator himself before he took on a career at Cat.
We had GPS designs built, and we have to put those onto the machines, into the display, so the operators can see actually what they're doing and get live, real data as to where they're digging, how deep they're digging. And we can put that on all these machines that we're using out here today. We're using the technology, which is going to make this go a lot faster than normal. Brian, that's running the excavator, he knows exactly how deep to dig, how wide to dig. He knows where all the pillars are. He knows what everything is going on at this time. So knowing that and not having to get out of the machine or having a grade checker tell you what to do, we're going to be twice as fast as we would if we were doing it the old-fashioned way with stakes and paint.
The other design aspect to this maze was building in enough slope for proper drainage should it rain. So Cat settled on a 1% slope that went from the top right of the game board to the bottom left. But beyond the functionality of that drainage design, which did work, by the way, Caterpillar actually got a pretty significant amount of rain as they were building this thing, you couldn't allow the functionality to get in the way of the form. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, this thing still needs to look like a game board.
It's got to be able to drain to a low area through a pipe. With the human eye, it looks perfectly flat, but it's actually sloped at 1% to the south for us. And then we wanted to make sure our finished grade at the top was that same 1% fall. Because if it wasn't, when we would dig the maze and the machines would move, they wouldn't look in the ground the same depth. And that was critical for me to be able to say, that's going to look right on film. Because if you see 4 feet of machine over here, but only 2 feet of machine over here, it's just not going to aesthetically look right.
Now that 336 that we mentioned earlier, that was the sole machine digging this maze. Now, there were about 10 other machines in support, including a 323 task with some of the finer bucket details, a couple of D6 dozers working on the berms surrounding the maze, 970 and 950 loaders moving dirt around, a 150 motor grader. But that 336, that was the star of the show. Now, here's Josh explaining why they decided to dig this whole damn thing with one machine.
We thought, well, we could dig it faster if we have 2 people dig. But then I took a step back and I thought, no, we don't want to do that because you'll be able to see 2 different people's digging style. And we don't want that, you know. And then it even goes to what bucket do we put on the 336? What teeth do we put on it to be able to give the look that we want? You know, so we put wide chisel teeth on the buckets. So the video would show that, yeah, that was really done by, you can see the bucket teeth marks in there. We didn't want anybody to think, nah, that's computer generated. And you can probably see in the modeling of the dirt on the walls that it's truly excavator bucket teeth, you know? So those are some of the things that were above my expectation that I thought about, but I didn't realize it would make a big difference in the end.
And look, at the end of the day, the precision and fine grading that Cat Grade with 3D made possible on this 336 as it dug this trench is legitimately incredible. Now, one of the guys on site had what is to me the perfect description when he compared watching the bucket work that this 336 was capable of thanks to the 3D machine control. He compared it to removing layers of frosting from a cake. And you can kind of see that perfectly in this footage.
He is using the bucket and the side of the bucket to shave that off nice and pretty. And it's a really intricate, time-consuming thing to make that look that square. When you get the drone view of this and you guys see this when it's finished, it's amazing to think that an excavator did every bit of that excavation. Now we've got the dozers doing some slope work and another excavator doing some other stuff, but as far as the maze cut, he's doing it all with that 336.
And look, while GPS and 3D machine control certainly make a high degree of precision and accuracy possible, that doesn't mean that this is a necessarily easy task for an operator to carry out.
The challenge for the operator is, as you can see, if you look behind there, you don't want to knock one of those over. This dirt has been dug out and it's been compacted and been watered, so it's very compact dirt, and that's what's keeping those pillars, the center of the mazes, up without falling. So Brian's having to take his time to dig on grade to make it look good, but also he doesn't want to knock any one of those pillars over. So it's mind taxing for the operator, but again, he's not having to look at stakes or worry about somebody walking around him because there's nobody there. He's staring all at the GPS on the machine.
Now, the initial estimate on how long it was going to take to dig this trench maze was 32 hours. That's 4 8-hour workdays. In the end, it took 70 hours. But as Ryan explains here, and this footage was actually taken when the team was a couple of days into digging the maze already, as he explains here, that 70 hours could have been a lot longer.
As you can see, it's a very intricate, hard dig. It's not like just digging a straight trench or footings. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. But with the GPS on the machine, the Cat Grade 3D, you can see there's nobody down in the trench, there's no paint marks, there's nothing. He is doing all of it just from the cab of the excavators. It is a little time consuming, but I can't imagine how long it would take if we had stakes out there and paint lines and had to go through the whole process that way, the old traditional way.
In fact, once the maze was complete, you know, beyond the awesome new 336 and beyond that 323 and beyond the D6s and all the other awesome support machines that this team had at their disposal when creating this thing, Ryan said that the most important tool for his team was that Cat Grade with 3D machine control. And look, the big reason for that, and Ryan has plenty of experience with this from, you know, his former career as an operator, the big reason for that is time savings. Because once everything was said and done, Ryan actually said that 70 hours that it took to create this maze was probably half of the time it would have taken to do this whole thing by setting stakes and manually checking grade. In other words, whatever faith that Ryan and everyone else inside of CAT, whatever faith that they had in their own 3D machine control, consider building this giant maze an altar calling conversion experience. Because man, now they believe.
It's a testament to our GPS, or I'll just say our cat grade technology, to where, you think of the core machines that ran that cat grade 3D, the 336, the D6XE, the 150 motor grader, those three machines, to be able to work off the same GPS design data and to be able to build something like this to the detail is just amazing. And I think a lot of people don't understand that they have those capabilities.
All right, so the maze is built, the berms are up, everything is ready, right? Well done, everybody. Let's all go home. Wrong. Technically, you're only halfway there. You still got to get players in here, and you got to get the skid steers inside, and you got to bring Pac-Man and the ghosts to life. So how did Cat pull off the other half of this Herculean task of bringing a giant game of Pac-Man to life? We answer that question, including how it was animated, how Cat worked with Bandai Namco to get the license to actually use Pac-Man and the ghosts in this actual game, and we talked to two of the guys that were operating skid steers and got to play a real life game of Pac-Man. So be sure to go ahead and check that video out right now. The link is in the description below or up above me in the card. And if you like this video, please do us a favor and hit that like button below. It really helps our channel out. And if you want more videos and more coverage of the latest in construction equipment, visit us at our website at equipmentworld.com. And while you're there, subscribe to our daily newsletter. And if you haven't already, subscribe right here on YouTube as well, and turn on notifications, hit the bell so you're not missing out on any of our future heavy equipment videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate your time, and we'll see you in the next one.